Welcome to At Issue. Thank you so much for joining us for a discussion on America's energy future with Dr. Winston Porter.
Hi.
Dr. Porter is the president of Environmental Strategies, which is based down in Savannah, Georgia. And he's going to be talking about both traditional energy and some of the renewable energy as we move forward in our half-hour program. So first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
A little bit of background: former assistant administrator at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Also, we should probably point out that you have a degree in chemical engineering, a PhD in the same field, from Texas for the undergraduate, Cal Berkeley.
Right, for the graduate. Yep.
Okay.
Right.
And we want to say thank you to the Peoria Area World Affairs Council for bringing Dr. Porter into Peoria. We know that as this show airs, you would have spoken already to the World Affairs Council.
That's
so
right.
we thank them.
You bet.
Let's talk with, first of all, with the question of fracking. Everybody's talking about fracking. We hear about the Marcellus Shale and the Barnett Formation and things that we don't understand. Can you explain fracking?
Okay. Yeah, hydraulic fracturing, better known as fracking, is a process where oil or gas well is drilled and pipe is sent out laterally in a horizontal way within a shale formation that contains oil or gas. And what's happened is high pressure water with a little bit of sand and a little bit of chemicals, about less than 1%, goes down into this formation and is pressured high enough to actually fracture the formation, i.e. the fracking. And so it means this oil and gas has been there forever. It's just we haven't had the technology to sort of open up these real tight shales and let the oil and gas out, oil or gas out. And that's what happens with fracking. You put a high pressure, and the high pressure is only applied for 3 or 4 days, or 4 or 5 days, where the fracturing is done. It's not a continuous process. You put a lot of high pressure water down there through these holes and everything for about 4 or 5 days, opens up the formation, then hopefully the next 30 years or so, you have gas or oil that'll flow out of its own volition from down there.
And this works well because shale is a sedimentary rock in layers?
It's in layers, and it is a vein of it, so to speak, with all kinds of other things between it, bedrock and so forth. Usually the shale formations are about 1 mile to 2 miles below the surface, which is fortuitous because that's way below the drinking water. Drinking water and irrigation water tends to be about the first 500 feet of soil, and it's a long ways away from that. But for eons, this oil and gas has been there, and we've known it's there, but we just haven't known how to get it in an economical way. And a guy named George Mitchell and others came up with this process in the last 10 years or so in order how to get the right kind of chemicals, the right kind of pressures, the right kind of horizontal wells and so forth to get into the formation and crack it. So what it's done is decrease the cost of producing gas by maybe 2/3. And plus we found we got a lot more gas available now, and oil.
Let me back up. You said that it's way below the groundwater.
Right.
So fracking is not a threat, in your opinion, to groundwater?
Well, I think I wouldn't go quite that far. I think that it passes through the groundwater, through in a pipeline. You know, it goes down through a pipe, down, and what happens in the first, say, 1,000 feet or 500 feet of this well, there's lots of layers of additional pipe to be sure it doesn't radiate or have it leak and go into the groundwater. So there's pretty strong regulations developing on how to do this, because it does go through the drinking water in a series of 2 or 3 concentric pipes, but there's a lot of time spent and a lot of regulatory material coming out on how to do that in a safe way. And so far we've done thousands of frackings, and there's, to my knowledge, not been any case where it's breached the well and gone into the drinking water. So it's something you have to work at.
What about air pollution?
Air pollution, the main air pollution would be methane, which, by the way, is also a greenhouse gas. Natural gas is basically methane. And so just as we talked today, as a matter of fact, a very famous study is just being finished by the University of Texas Engineering Department and Environmental Defense Fund, which is a major environmental firm, has been looking at how much gas is actually lost in this process. Now, the companies don't want to lose any gas because it's got value, but what the numbers are coming up with is much less than 1% of the gas is lost into the atmosphere through all the piping and other things going on, which is much lower than they expected. It's lower than EPA expected, and that's not the final comment on this necessarily, but it is something you have to work on, because some people will say, well, if you let a lot of gas methane escape, that's a stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So it's not good to have it go into the atmosphere. But it looks, from all the indications I've seen now, that we're going to lose a very small amount. It's certainly to the company's advantage, as I say, to keep it as low as you possibly can from global warming aspects, but also just the fact this is a valuable product. They don't want to lose gas. So I think it looks pretty good so far.
And these formations, or the shale formations, are all over the country?
There are a lot of places. Yeah, I'd say at least 20 states now that we're well aware of shale being there, from California to Pennsylvania and Ohio and New York State and all kinds of other places. Texas has a lot of it. Louisiana has a lot of it. Arkansas has a lot of it, et cetera. But it seems to be popping up. I mean, in other words, people have not spent a lot of time mapping these in the past necessarily, because they haven't had the technology to recover them anyway. But it looks like there's lots of places where we have them. Canada has them too. Overseas, a lot of places have this kind of shale. We can talk about that later, but there's a lot of interest in shale overseas.
Let's stay on the environmental aspect of this. Once the natural gas is out and it's taken to a plant and burned, how much pollution does it put into the air compared to, say, coal?
Okay. Well, first off, natural gas is our most flexible energy source, in the sense that you mentioned burning it to make power, which it certainly does. It's taking market share from coal. About half our electricity has been historically gone from coal. That's now down to about 30% using the gas from fracking and other things. So you can use natural gas several ways. You can use a lot of it to make electric power and displace coal to some extent. You can also use it as a petrochemical feedstock, and you also can use it to heat homes. Most of our homes are heated by natural gas. So it has 3 or 4 uses. As far as the pollution from gas, you're right, it's about half the emissions of CO2 or carbon dioxide is coal. As a matter of fact, not to beat this to death, but we are producing less greenhouse gases in the atmosphere now than Europe, because we've replaced a lot of our coal with gas already, and our emissions of CO2 have gone down markedly already, just by changing those 2 fuels.
You mentioned North Dakota has a lot of oil production. It's moved up to number 2, the number 2 state?
And oil production in the United States, yeah.
And that's not too surprising, because it's just south of the Canadian tar sands, as they're commonly referred to. Canada is our number 1 supplier of oil other than ourselves. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the largest supplier to the United States of oil. Of all the oil we get from Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and a lot of other places, by far the largest is oil we get from Canada. Just comes across the border. So it's a pretty big deal. Canada's very obviously close to us, and it's pretty friendly to us compared to a lot of other places in the world, which are further away and not as friendly.
I want to talk about that because of the Keystone pipeline. That's been, I think for 6 years now, it's been debated. It's had at least 3 major hearings before the EPA. What's your take on whether or not we should have the Keystone pipeline?
Well, I think we should have a Keystone pipeline, because the first basis, I think, is the Canadians are going to produce that oil. You know, I think the environmentalists that talk about we can maybe just keep it in the ground is not going to happen. They've already made it clear they're going to produce the oil. It'll be shipped around by rail cars, or it'll go to China. Something's going to happen to it. In fact, a lot of it's going around already. So I think that's going to happen. And the question really becomes, should we have a large pipeline to go down to where the refineries and things are, or should we take it in thousands upon thousands of rail cars, or to go all over the place? And both are going to happen. So I think it makes, and generally speaking, I think for long distance travel, pipelines are safer and less expensive than a rail car. That's the sort of bottom line. And I don't mean we don't need rail cars, we do, because you can't get pipelines everywhere. You know, Warren Buffett is into this in a big way because he owns a big railroad company, and that's fine. So you have a lot of things happening, but I think it would make sense to take this in the safest, most inexpensive way down to where we need it.
If we continue producing more oil, if we take oil from Canada Do you foresee a 1970s oil embargo problem ever occurring in the near future, at least?
I don't think so. I think that we used to, just 4 or 5 years ago, we were importing 60% of our oil from the Middle East and other places. Now we're taking 40%. So we had a big drop already in importing of oil. And we're going to have an additional drop in importing. So we have so much more leverage now that we have, because we have so much of our own oil, and including Canada oil, that we are not beholden to the Venezuelans and the Libyans and so forth on oil in the world. We're still going to import. There'll be a lot of trade in oil in perpetuity, I think. But it looks to me like we're heading to an era where we have a lot more control of our own destiny. I don't see gas lines anytime soon where people say, well, OPEC cut us off, so therefore we all have to stand in 2-hour lines like we did back in the 70s.
That's an important issue because I believe the number is 97% of transportation is oil-based.
97% of oil. I'm not quite.
Transportation. Oil provides 97% of all transportation.
About 95%.
95%.
Because our cars run on mostly gasoline and trucks and airplanes and everything run on basically gasoline, jet fuel, and diesel. So it's a very high percent. If you look at a graph, you'll see that 95, 96% of all the oil, all the transportation is provided by that. There's a few other small things.
What do you foresee, talking about America's energy future, what do you see the mix being down the road? If it's 95, 96% oil now?
Well, I think the biggest threat, if you want to call it that, to gasoline cars, let's say, is probably going to be natural gas, inexpensive natural gas being used in cars. They're already using a lot of natural gas in fleet trucks. Some of the big grocery manufacturers and so forth are changing their fleets of trucks, large trucks, from diesel or gasoline to natural gas. I don't see that being a huge issue anytime soon. You also have electric cars coming on to some extent, still a very small percent, much less than 1%, but you're seeing quite a bit of natural plug-in electric and hybrid cars coming on stream too that'll take some market share. My guesstimate is that we're talking a couple of decades at least where gasoline and diesel are going to be the predominant share of our transportation fleet. But I think it'll be chipped away by natural gas to some extent, maybe electricity to an extent. But keep in mind, electricity, the cars you're seeing now that are running electricity are highly subsidized by the government. You get about a $10,000 credit on a car if you buy it, whereas the other things have to do market prices.
So at some point in time, you're saying we should not have that subsidy for
I think it should be phased out. I think it's even good for the industry. I think wind and solar and renewables, all that stuff, I'd like to see increase and be a larger share. As far as I'm concerned, the more different options we have, the better. And I think wind and solar are growing from a very small base, and other renewables are. But most of our renewables now are really not wind and solar. They're ethanol, which is huge because it's mandated by the government again, and the other is
biomass.
Biomass and that sort of thing. But there's other things too. The one I was trying to think about was hydroelectric. We have hydroelectric is still it's a renewable because the water runs all the time down mountains and so forth, but it's much bigger than wind and solar. But it's not probably getting much bigger because we've had hydroelectric for 100 years at least, and it's not getting any bigger because there's quite a bit of opposition to having more dams put up and things like that. So when we talk about renewables, it's mainly ethanol and hydroelectric now, and then in the future, wind and solar. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I don't see anything on the immediate horizon that's going to be able to compete, particularly with oil and gas.
I want to stay on oil and gas for one more question, and then move on to nuclear and then to renewable.
Okay.
I attended a program about 4 or 5 years ago where an expert said we're probably going to start being in trouble around 2030, 2035, somewhere in the 2030s. We're going to have more demand than there is oil supply.
Yeah, there used to be a term that's actually dropped out of the lexicon. That term was peak oil. Peak oil was a term that you see a lot in the last 20 or 30 years where people are trying to guesstimate or estimate what will be the peak of oil. We'll never use that much oil again or have that much oil again. And that term has dropped out of the discussion. And the reason being that we appear to have lots more oil than we thought. I'm not saying there won't be a peak someday, but it's probably more like 100 years from now than it is 20 or 30 years. And I don't even know that. Because it's not like we have unbelievable amounts of oil and oil sands and oil shales and all kinds of stuff. The problem has always been it's not economical. And it may never be economical in some of them.
Well, and let me throw in one other aspect.
Okay.
There's a website called energytomorrow.org that indicates that we could be energy independent. I'm not sure what that term means, but energy independent by 2030 if the Keystone pipeline is built and if we as a country are allowed to drill in the off-limit areas. There's some areas we should not drill in. Mm-hmm. Is that?
Well, I think you can do anything for money. You can make anything safe if you want to spend enough money. It may not be economical, and there's certain areas where there's just strong public opposition to it. But I think, in answer to your question, to me, to say we're energy independent is kind of like Bill Clinton saying, what does the word is mean? What does the word independent mean? We're going to have a lot more oil and gas, a lot more flexibility, a lot more leverage than we do now, but I think it'll always be trade in oil and gas. We're going to ship some gas. We pay $3. Our gas is worth $3 in this country, is what it cost us a million BTUs. It's about $16 a million BTUs in Japan or Europe or China. And so we're going to probably end up exporting some of our gas to those countries because we can make a buck on it, and they're willing to pay a lot of money for that. And there's other things going back and forth that always have certain amount of trade going on. So I don't think we'll ever just draw a wall around the United States. Every gallon of oil has to stay within that fence around the United States. But I do think we will be independent in the sense that we won't have gas lines. We have a lot more leverage on the world scene with oil and gas too. We are the biggest gas producer in the world now. Within 3 or 4 years, we'll be the biggest oil producer in the world because of fracking and related things.
Let's turn our attention to nuclear power.
Okay.
I don't know the exact date, but it was the 1980s that the last nuclear power plant opened. I understand there are, I think, 4 more that are about to. Mm-hmm. You, at one time, actually were in charge of nuclear waste disposal, military, I understand, but nonetheless, you have some background in this. And that's one of the questions that people always bring up, disposal of spent nuclear fuel. What is your vision of nuclear fuel's role in our future for energy?
I think, first off, I now live in Georgia. I lived near D.C. for a long time. I now live in Georgia. And the state of Georgia is putting in 2 nuclear plants as we sit here today. They're well on through the construction. Next to our South Carolina has put in 2 nuclear plants in. So you're right, there's about a 30-year period there where nothing was built for a variety of reasons, economic and environmental and otherwise. But it's making something of a comeback. It got a little bit of body blow by the Japanese earthquake that did all that kind of damage. But I think what we learned from that is don't build these things too near the ocean if you're anywhere near that kind of fault and so forth. But I think, frankly, we're getting along pretty well right now with storing the nuclear waste in various kinds of containers and water at the site of the power plants. That's not an incredibly long-term decision, but it seems to be working for quite a few years in the future. The Yucca Mountain thing, because of Harry Reid and other issues, was not okayed, although they're still taking looks at it. So we don't have a place to take it to its ultimate resting place. But Carlsbad, New Mexico, for example, has stepped forward and said, we'll take it. They have a big nuclear waste facility there now for lower level waste, and who knows where that's going to go. But I think we should try to get a place to store it. I don't think it's a game breaker right now, because when I talk to the power people, they don't seem terribly concerned right now. Now, if you would try to build more new plants, people will bring it up again. But the thing about nuclear power plants, it has 2 outstanding features. It's very expensive, unfortunately, at least to build the plants, but it doesn't put out any emissions, in terms of greenhouse gases, A, and B, it takes very little fuel in terms of quantity. This room here would probably hold all the waste in the country just about from nuclear power plants. It's just the uranium process is such that it isn't like coal where you need 100 rail cars a day. You need a very small amount of material to go for a long time. So it really doesn't have much of a problem, although we certainly need to find a permanent home for this stuff. It does not seem to be incredibly critical right now, but I'd like to see us find one.
And despite the fact of Japan, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, you still think that's a safe
Well, I think it can be made safe. Everything needs to be worked on to be safe, and I think the Russian design was apparently not good, and there were a lot of other issues. 3 Mile Island, nobody got hurt there, and I don't mean it wasn't a catastrophe. It was. It probably was the death knell, or the temporary death knell of the nuclear business in this country. But in fact, the system kind of worked. It was a catastrophic thing, but it wasn't catastrophic in the sense that people were killed and there's all kinds of loose radiation. We've learned a lot. One of the things that's happening now, I might throw in here a little bit, is the future of nuclear power may be more instead of these giant multi-billion-dollar facilities into modular-sized plants that are, the size of your car or something like that, in that sort of range. They can be made in different ways, and they can be put together, so you don't need to have just one big massive plant or a state or whatever. They may go to these modular things, which I think are more fail-safe, I understand, and they just don't take the sort of... See, the problem with nuclear power, among other things right now, it takes you 15 years just to get your permits almost. And you have to plan a long ways out when you can't even start construction for 15 years. You got to say, will I need this thing in 20 years or 25 years? That's a little tougher job. Whereas natural gas, you put it in tomorrow morning.
Let's turn to renewable in our closing moments.
Okay.
You've alluded to nuclear or to renewable power, and there are opponents to that. There are those who are saying the birds of prey are being killed. There are those who worry about radar interference. It's at the amount of land it uses, the appearance of the wind farms. Yet there's value to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I should start here with is the president has recently given a speech about climate change, and it's kind of like a mini national, when you read it, a mini national energy plan. And what he says, right now we should rely primarily on natural gas from fracking as a transition fuel to renewables. And the question is it 2 years or 20 years or 80 years or whatever? And so I don't think it's a bad statement, frankly. I think he recognizes that it's not ready for prime time right now. Both of these, the wind and solar particularly, are 1 or 2% or less of our energy. They're not economically feasible right now, but they're heavily subsidized. But having said all that, I don't want to take them off the table. I think wind and solar will be very handy someday, and we ought to keep chipping away at it. I would even like to see the subsidies reduced so people really have to work harder to make them competitive, because they're not going to ever get really big in my sort of view if they can't compete in the marketplace. I think you can be both safer from an environmental standpoint, and you can be competitive. I mean, look at coal and natural gas. They're very competitive in the economic world, but gas is much more cleaner, so to speak, than coal is. So it's got a big advantage in the marketplace right now. So I think we should have them. I think they're going to happen. I just think it's going to take a time, and I'd like to see them have less subsidy. Maybe that may be strange than more, because the subsidies haven't worked too well. They've helped some, but there are places that aren't subsidized where wind and solar is doing pretty well. So I'd kind of like to not do the mandate approach and the government's going to pick winners approach. I think they have some good ideas. The only there's a couple things that these things have that aren't helpful. One is wind and solar are a very diffuse type of energy. It takes about 20 times as much land to build a solar plant or a wind plant than it does a regular conventional power plant. So like there's a big plant for example, in Wichita, Kansas, 400 megawatts, which is a big power plant from wind, but it's 60,000 acres to get enough wind farm out there and to get enough. And the same thing is true of solar. It takes about 20 times as much land. So if you've got a 500 acres for a regular power plant, you got 10,000 acres to build an equivalent of these other plants. And so, and secondly, not to be too negative about it, because I'm actually positive about renewables, but they need backup. The sun doesn't shine all the time, the wind doesn't blow all the time, and in some places it doesn't blow at all hardly. It blows a lot in South Dakota, which is not particularly near the load centers are. So what that means, you've got to have backup oil or gas or nuclear to come in during the part of the day when you don't have enough wind or enough solar. We can have more bigger batteries, it'll help some, but that's a long ways off too. So they've got their inherent disadvantages, and just mentioning the word renewable to me doesn't solve the problem. It isn't like you mention it and then we all know it's the answer. I don't know it's the answer. I think it's got a shot. I think it's going to be a niche player for the time being, and it'll maybe get better as time goes along, but it's got some, like everything, has inherent disadvantages or advantages.
In about 30 remaining seconds, an overview. What is America's energy future?
Well, first off, America's energy futures. We're the biggest in the world in oil and gas, which gives us some sense of comfort because we now have lots of oil and gas to help ourselves. I think fracking is going to be a huge player, apparently, and I think we've got a lot of different things to compete with. So I think we have a lot of things to compete with, and I think we're going to be a big player on the world scene because we have a lot of technology that other people are going to pay us for, Eastern Europe and China, and so forth. And we'll have a lot of interactions with the Russians because they don't want to be. They have a lot of gas now, and they'd like to keep control of Europe, so to speak, over gas. So it's going to be a pretty good future.
So you're more positive than you might have been 10 years ago?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm much more positive than I was 10 years ago.
Dr. Winston Porter, thank you so much for being with us on that issue.
Enjoyed it.
I appreciate the update on America's energy future. We'll be back next week with another edition of At Issue. Please join us then.